Hey guys, today I'm going to go over some quick basics in the program Adobe InDesign. So let's get started. So I went ahead and clicked New File, and I'm going to start with these up here, these presets. So we've got print, web, and mobile. So depending on what you're doing, you can click on print, and it's going to give you some typical print sizes for you to use as a template. Web. So InDesign is not only good for print stuff, but you can also use it for web mockups and different digital things as well, such as web and mobile. But for this project, we're going to go ahead and click on print, and we're going to do letter. So that's just a normal sheet of paper, or normal size sheet of paper. And then let's go ahead and talk about this stuff over here. So under preset details, it says Untitled 1. I always like to go ahead and click on this and name my file something right away. That way it gets saved as something. So I'm just going to make a cat poster. So I'm going to call this cat poster. I'm going to leave these the same. I'm going to uncheck facing pages. So facing pages is if we had something with a spread. So if you think of a magazine, when you open up a magazine, the left and the right hand side of the pages, that's called a spread when it's together. Since we're only going to have a document with one page, we don't need facing pages turned on. Okay, we're not really going to talk about columns, but if we don't really need that for this assignment, but I am going to talk about margins and bleed. So margins are basically guides that help you keep everything consistently spaced. And I'll show you here when I open it up. I'm going to leave this at 0.25, and that's going to give me a 1/4 of an inch guide around the entire inside part of my document, and I'll show you that here in a second. Okay, let's talk about bleed. Bleed is anything that's added to the edge of your artboard. So what I mean by that is your artboard is 8.5 inches by 11 inches tall. Bleed is going to be outside of that 8.5 by 11. So it's adding extra, basically, artboard to your document in case you're going to get it printed and cut by a printer. So whenever printers print things and they cut it, sometimes they shift and sometimes things can get cut off. And if you don't have a bleed, then that could result in some white on the outside part of your document unless you have a bleed. And we'll talk about that when I open this up. So I'm going to do 0.125, and that's just 1/8 of an inch. And I clicked on this top. I typed in 0.125, and then when I click off of it, it adds it to the rest, the bottom, left, and right. If I wanted to change one of these, so say that I wanted the inside, the right, or the left to be different, I would have to uncheck this link right here, and that would allow me to make these different. So if I wanted this to be 1/4 of an inch, I could do that, and it won't automatically update all these other ones. So that just allows you to link all of them. So you could just type in one, and it adds it to the others. So I'm going to go ahead and change that back to 0.125. And then we won't use slug right now. Okay, so we talked about margins, bleed, and then facing pages. And then I also named my file. So let's go ahead and click Create down here at the bottom. And okay, so now this is going to be, this is our artboard. And let's go ahead and click up here to the top right, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I'm going to go ahead and make mine say typography. So all I did was I clicked Essentials Classic, clicked the drop down. Yours might say something different. It might say Essentials, but I'm going to go ahead and click on typography, and that's just going to give me panels over here that are beneficial to or helpful to typography. Okay, so now let's talk about our artboard real quick, because there's a couple different colors on here that probably don't make sense right now. Okay, so these inside lines, remember when I talked about margins? This is our margin right here. It's going to be 1/4 of an inch from the edge of our document to the inside. So a 1/4 inch from here to there, all the way around. And this, like I said, is just a guide. It's not going to print whenever we export this or send it to a printer. This is just for us to keep things nicely spaced around the outside. Because if you're printing something, you don't want text to be close to the edge, because like I said, it could get cut off. So this kind of pinkish purple line is our margins. Okay, so the white part of this is our artboard. So that's going to be 8.5 by 11. And then this red part right here, these are our bleeds. This is our bleed. So from here to there is 0.125 inches. And that's just excess that we added onto our artboard in case we get this printed. And I'll show you how to set this up before we export. Okay, so let's first talk about placing images, because images are a little bit different if you're used to, say, Photoshop and using images in Photoshop. With InDesign, you place an image onto the artboard, and then that image is stored, say, like on your desktop. So InDesign is linking that into the artboard, and it's pulling it from your desktop. So say that you're cleaning up your desktop because it's kind of cluttered and your computer's running out of space. So you're trying to clean up your desktop, and you move a background image that's on your desktop, and then you try to open it up in InDesign. That file is going to become missing, okay, because you've changed the path that it's linked to. And I'll talk about that here in a second. So let's go ahead and just place an image. So you can either go up to File, Place, or you can just hit Command D. And that's this little squiggly thing right there. That's Command. So Command D is Place. And I already have a background here that I've downloaded. But you can also make a background in Photoshop, save it as a JPEG or any other file, really, a TIFF. You want to make sure that if you're doing something for print, that you're using a print file. So JPEG, TIFF, PDF. Those are some good ones to use. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Sky, and I'm going to click Open. So what that's going to do is it's going to kind of snap it to my cursor here. So it's not going to do anything unless I click. So if I click once, it's going to drop this image in here at full size. So let me show you what happens. Alright, so now I've got a huge image that's dropped in here. And I could go in and resize this to fit my artboard. But maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to just click and drag it to make it the size of my artboard. So let me hit Command Z to undo. Okay, so now it's back on my cursor. I just hit Command Z until it got back to my cursor. So now what I can do is I can click and drag, and it's going to maintain the right proportions. So I can click and drag and make it the size of my artboard. That way I don't have to scale it down. Okay, so if you have a background like this, you want to start it out here at the bleed. So I'm going to click out here at the bleed, and I'm just going to click and drag. And mine's a little bit different proportions than my artboard, so I'm just going to click and drag to the right side. Hits, well, I couldn't do it because it was too short. But basically you would click and drag till that right side hits this other bleed mark. But now I can just do this. I can click the outside part of my box, drag it to the bleed here, and then click and drag this up, and just to match the bleed. So what the outside box does, so this blue box right here, this is going to be your crop box. So if you wanted to crop this image, you would just click and drag this box, and it's going to crop your image. The image is still there, so if I click and drag this back up, my image is still there. It's just a non-destructive way to crop something. If I wanted to resize my actual image, I'd have to click on it and then double click. And then see how this box now is kind of a brown gold color? That means that I'm going to be modifying the actual size of the image. So if I click and drag, well, I got to hold shift, click and drag this gold box, see how it scaled my image now? But it didn't go past my crop box. So if I double click on this, you can see that it's above and below my crop box. But since my crop box is snapped to my bleeds here, which are these red lines, it's not going to go past that because it's cropping it to that. Hopefully that makes sense. So if you want to change the crop of your image, you just click on it, and then you can click one of the boxes on the corners, and then you can make that the size that you want. If you want to change the size or the position of your image within the crop box, you'd have to click on it and then double click to get this gold box. And now I can hold shift and I can scale this up or down depending on what I need to do for my image. So I like that so far. And then here's another hotkey for you. So if you hit W on your keyboard, that's going to allow you to preview your artboard the way it would when you print it. So see how my bleeds went away and my excess stuff went away? This is just a preview mode. So all I did was hit W. So you can hit W to preview and then W again to get back to your the outside part, the pasteboard as well, which is this gray part. Okay, so I've placed an image. So Command D allows you to place an image, and then you click on it once to change the crop, and you can click and drag it to be whatever size you need, and then you can double click on it to change the actual size of the image. Okay, so let's talk about, actually I want to place my cat image in there now because this is my cat poster. So Command D, I'm going to find my cat file here, and then this file was already cut out. So this was already cut out in Photoshop, so I don't have to do anything to it. So if you need something without a background, say like a cat image like this, you want to make sure that you cut it out in Photoshop and save it as a TIFF or a PNG. And then I'm going to click once, and I can double click on this image to scale them down. So I'm holding Shift and Option, and it's going to scale from the middle. And then notice how my crop box is still bigger than the cat. If I want my crop box to be the same size as the image, so if I double click on the image, see how this box is a lot smaller? I want my crop box to kind of snap to that. So what you can do is you can double click on the corner right here, and it's going to snap that crop box to the actual size of the image. So then now I can click and drag this and place it wherever I want. So I want it to be kind of right here on the clouds. Cool. Hit W, preview it. Looking good so far. Awesome. So now I need to add some text. So I'm going to add text using the Type tool. And I'm going to click and drag on top of my image here, and that's going to create a text box. Okay. So now I can type out, let's say he's lost. So maybe lost cat. Okay. I'm going to click and drag to select that type, and I'm going to change the font up here in the top left. So I'm going to click the drop down, and maybe I want to, let's see, let's do that one. And then maybe I want to make it all caps. So I'm going to click this guy right here, all caps, and then I can increase the size now. Or I can actually type in if I know what size I want it to be. And then click off of it. Okay, so notice how my type is being cut off, and there's a red square here with a plus sign in it. You guys see that? That means that I have extra type in here that's being cut off. So to get that type back, I would just hit escape to make sure that I've got this box here. And then I can either double click on one of these corner boxes, these white corner boxes, and it's going to, kind of like we did with this image where we double clicked on this to snap it to the actual size. You can do that with text boxes, double click on it, and it's going to snap it to the size of your text. So now I can move this around. I'm going to center it. and then I want to change the color. Okay, so color in InDesign, I like to use swatches. So if you don't see swatches over here on the right hand side, you can go over to Window up here at the top. You can go to Color and then Swatches. You can also go to Color or Gradient. I like to use swatches because it allows me to save a color. Maybe I want to use like some type of nice light blue. So I could start with this blue, this cyan. Okay. So you see what happened? I didn't make sure that my text was selected, and it put a cyan a stroke on my box. So I don't want that. I'm going to go ahead and click None, and that's going to take that off. And I want to make sure that this T is selected. So see how it says Formatting Effects Text? That's what this button. So if I have this selected, it's going to put color on the container. So this container that Lost Cat is in, I can make it different colors. You can also change the stroke like I had just shown you. But we don't want to do that for this instance. We want to make sure that the T is selected, and I'm going to start with this light cyan color. Okay. So if I wanted to change this blue, I could go ahead and click this plus sign down here to create a new swatch. And then I can double click on this blue. And now I've got some sliders here. I'm going to click preview so I can see it. Maybe I want it to be this nice light blue. So you can modify your color a little bit. Depending on what you want it to look like. You can even name it something, so uncheck name with color value, and you can name it something up here. And then you can hit OK, and then it saves your color down here. So you created a new one, it saved it, you double click on the square here of the color, and you can change the color and hit OK. And it's there for you to use later on in your document. Cool. So that's kind of hard to read, so maybe I don't want to use that, but I just wanted to show you guys how to create a new color. Because I get a lot of people that ask, okay, well there's only like 6 colors here. How do I get the color that I want? I like to use swatches, but like I said, you can also use, if you go up to Window, Color, you can also use Color to get the color that you want. But again, make sure that you have the T selected. Otherwise, you're going to change the color of the container. Okay. Maybe I want that just to be straight up black. Cool. So now I've got my text here, I've got my cat, and I've got my background image. If I want to duplicate something, so say I wanted multiple things on here that are already on here, I could click on it and I could hold Option and I can click and drag, and that's going to duplicate things. So if I click on the cat, I can hold Option, click and drag, and I can duplicate the cat. You can also do that with type like I just did, and then you can change. So to select multiple things, you can click on something, hold Shift, click on another thing, and then you can move those things around. You notice how when I move this, that like magenta line pops up? That means that this text box that I'm moving around is completely centered. So this line goes from the top of the artboard to the bottom. That means that I've lined it center with this artboard, which is helpful because sometimes we don't know, it might be off a little bit. Maybe that's how we want it to look. But sometimes we want to make it aligned with the artboard. It just looks nice. Let's talk about pages real quick. So if we needed to add a back to this poster, which, for whatever reason we needed to do that, we could go ahead and click on Pages. If you don't see Pages, you can always find it up here under Window in Pages. So anything that could be over here on the right hand side, you can find under Window. That's very similar to Photoshop and the other programs. So if I needed to create a new page, okay, so these artboards are called pages in InDesign. I can go ahead and click New Page, and it's going to add a new page. And it's going to have the same kind of bleed and margins as my first one. I can also delete them by just clicking that and hitting the trash can, or I can click and drag that into the trash can. So that's pages. We won't talk about master pages right now, since this is a intro to InDesign, but that's going to be very helpful later on down the road. But I do want to talk about paragraph real quick. So we go ahead and click on paragraph down here, and say that we have a paragraph of text here. So I'm going to change this a little bit, make it smaller, make the text smaller, make the box a little bit bigger. So maybe I want to make that 40 point. And then maybe I want to fill this with placeholder text for now, just to get the paragraph the way I want it to look. So I would double click on it, right click, and then scroll down to fill with placeholder text. And that's going to add lorem ipsum. We've talked about that before. It's just filler text. It helps you get your document looking the way you want if you don't have the copy yet. But notice how it has a hyphen right here. That's kind of a no-no. I don't really like for you guys to do that. I'd like for that to be turned off. And the way you do that is under paragraph. So what I would do is I would select all of my text in my paragraph, and I would go to paragraph, and I would uncheck hyphenate. That's here. And it's going to drop down my text, and it's not going to allow you to hyphenate. Okay. So now maybe I want to make this a little bit smaller. And there you go. Cool. So see how my text box kind of overlaps my cat? I like to keep my boxes snapped to the end of the text, just in case I have multiple layers like I do here. And it just helps you kind of navigate and click on things a lot easier. So I'm going to double click on this bottom part right here, and it's going to snap my text box, my text container, to the bottom of the text. Okay, so that's paragraph hyphenate. So you can just uncheck that, and it'll just make your text look a lot better. You just want to drop your words down so that they're not hyphenated. It just reads a lot easier. Okay, so let's talk about layers real quick. If you click the drop down right here under layer 1, this little arrow, it's going to show you all the different links you have on your artboard. Okay, so I've got my whittlekitty.png, and then I've got my sky JPEG. So it's going to show you all the different layers. So say that my sky layer was on top and I couldn't see anything. There's two different ways that you could fix this. So say that you place this on last. So you could click on this, right click, and then you can say arrange, where is it? Send to back. Or you can come to layers, and then you can actually move the layer manually. So that's layers. And then the last thing I want to really talk about are links. So I'm going to talk about links real quick. Okay. So this is helpful for actually, like if I updated this link in Photoshop or something and I wanted to relink in InDesign, or say that I moved it and I need to find it, links is where you want to go ahead and fix that. And you can actually click on a file and then you click to the right of it and it'll show you what page it's on. So if you have multiple pages, this is very helpful for that. That's links. So let me go ahead and move one of my links from my desktop. So right now I have a desktop. So let me create a folder. Let's name it InDesign links. That way you can really. I'm going to put those in my InDesign folder right here. But it's going to screw up my path that I have linked for InDesign. So see how there's a question mark here? Missing. Double click to relink. So I can double click on this and it's going to direct me to find that missing link. So I can just go back to my desktop, click on my InDesign links here, folder, and then I want to make sure that I search for missing links in this folder right here, and that's going to help you find the other links. So I'm looking for my kitty, so if I come up here, my kitty image, so I can click on that and I can click open. It's going to relink it, and then it also relinked my background image too because it was in the same folder. So that's what this means right here. So I can go ahead and click don't show again and OK. And then now my links are relinked. So that's what I was talking about, how if you move a file from your desktop to clean it up, it messes up the link. That's what I was talking about. And you would just go to links to fix that. And that is under Window, Links. Okay, so let's talk about saving our file. So I had already saved my file at the very beginning, cat poster, but I can also hit Command-Shift-S and I can save that. And I always save mine to my desktop so it's easy to find. And I'm just going to save it right here in my folder that I already made. I'm going to hit save. It's going to do its thing. And then now if I go back to my folder, I've got a .indd. That's InDesign. That's the InDesign file name. So now I've got my InDesign project file, so I can go back and fix my layers and links if I need to later, and my text. But now I want to export it as a PDF. So I'm going to do Command E, and that's going to be export. So Command E. Or you can go to File, Export. Make sure that it's in the right spot. Make sure format is Adobe PDF print, because we're going to, for this thing, we would possibly want to get it printed, and hit save. Okay, so now I have an Adobe dialog box here. So because my document has bleeds, I would want to go to marks and bleeds. And then if I wanted to export it with bleeds, I would have to click on use document bleed settings to make sure that it adds that extra bleed to my document and that it prints with that. And then we'd want to show the crop marks for the printers to know where to actually cut it. But for this thing, we're just going to keep it, we're going to make this just a digital image, so I'm going to uncheck that and uncheck this. And then maybe I want this to be smaller, so I could go ahead and click smallest file size. And it's just going to export it as a small file, because I would just maybe want to use it for digital. But if you wanted to print it, you'd either use high quality or press quality, and then you would check crop marks and use document bleed settings. So then you hit export, and in my instance I had it preview in Acrobat, so then I can preview this. And there you go. That's some of the basics of InDesign. I hope you found this beneficial, and I'll talk to you later.